Now, Aaron, he was the stubbornest man you ever saw. Why, if you said that it was raining outside, he'd say, "Humph, I don't believe you." Or, the sun will come out later. Just to be contrary and just to be stubborn. And he'd find a way to argue with anybody about anything or to be stubborn about anything. So it was no surprise that when he died, he didn't feel like staying dead. He was lying there in his coffin. "Humph, it's boring in here. I'm not going to just lie here for all eternity. I'm going to get up out of this coffin." And he pushed his way out of the coffin and dug his way out of the ground and went home. Now his widow, who had taken him to the funeral with the preacher and his old friends, was very surprised to see him walk back into the house, and more surprised to see him walk back over and sit down in his favorite rocking chair. "It was boring being dead. I don't want to be dead anymore. I'm going to be here." "Well, but Aaron, you died." "Yeah, so what? I don't feel like it." "But Aaron, you can't just be here and be dead." "Well, just work around me. You can sweep the floor around my feet." "Aaron!" Well, soon word came out that Aaron had got back up out of his grave and was sitting around the house. Now, the preacher tried to come over and tell him that he should really go back and lie back down in his coffin, and Aaron said, "I don't feel like it." And other people came to the house, like the life insurance man. And the life insurance man told Aaron's widow, "He's sitting there in that rocking chair, so he can't really be dead, so I can't pay you the insurance money. He's dead, but he just won't admit it." Nope, he's sitting right there, rocking in his rocking chair. "We're not going to pay." Well, if the insurance money didn't pay, that meant they couldn't pay for the coffin, and that meant that the undertaker dug up the coffin because it was empty now. There was nobody in it. And besides that, it's very hard for a widow to have a social life if her husband is sitting and rocking in the living room. And he was still dead, and he was starting to, smell because he was dead. And after a while, bits of him started falling off, and she had to sweep those up. And soon, he was just a skeleton there in the living room, rocking and rocking back and forth. But his wife was getting mad. She was supposed to be a proper widow, and you can't be a proper widow with your husband's skeleton sitting there in the living room. And she started to go out and try to talk to her friends. And they'd said, "Well, Aaron's not much of a husband anymore. You should find somebody else." "How can I find somebody else if he won't even stay buried?" "Just find somebody really brave." And she asked around, and she was a nice-looking woman, and she owned a house now, but not very many men were willing to court a widow whose husband was still there in the form of a skeleton. There was one man, though, he thought himself really brave, and that was the fiddler who played music at all the dances. And he was a nice man and fairly handsome. And the widow asked him if he'd come over and play some music sometime. And he said, "Sure." And she said, "I got to warn you that Aaron's skeleton is still in the house. He won't stay buried." "Oh, that won't bother me," said the fiddler. "Not too much anyway." And he came over, and he began to play some nice fiddle music for Aaron's widow. And Aaron's skeleton perked up and said, "That's some nice music. Play some dancing music." Now, he hadn't expected the skeleton to really talk or anything, so he was a little bit afraid, but he played some dancing music. An old Aaron skeleton got up out of that rocking chair and began to dance. And he was having himself a fine old time. But you know, as he was dancing around the room to the fiddle music, a finger or two fell off. Because you know, he was still dead, and things don't stay attached all that well. And the fiddler looked and said, Aaron's starting to fall apart a little bit. What should I do? And his widow said, play faster. So the fiddler played a faster dancing tune, and old Aaron was dancing around the room. Bits of him were starting to fall off until all that was left of him were bones scattered all around the floor, and his skull in the middle of the room saying, "Ooh-wee, that was some fine dancing music, fiddler. Keep playing." And that fiddler was out of nerves, and he said, I'm sorry, but I think I have to take a break now. Bye! And he ran out the door. Well, Aaron's widow got the undertaker to come back and got another coffin, and they put Aaron's bones in one at a time, all mixed up, so they wouldn't be close together, and Aaron would have a hard time getting himself back together. And they put the skull in, nailed that coffin shut, and they took the coffin back to the graveyard. And Aaron was still complaining, "Hey, let me out of here. I don't want to be buried. I'm not that dead." "Yes, you are, honey. And this time you're going to stay buried." And they buried him in the ground, and the widow went home. And even though she couldn't get the fiddler come back and court her, eventually someone else did, and she married again, and they lived happily ever after. But people going by the graveyard at night could still hear Aaron grumbling, "Let me out of here. I don't want to stay in this coffin. Let me out of here." So Aaron was the only one who didn't get to live happily ever after. And that's the story of old Aaron's dead.